to the Tele-Education class. So how are you all? Must be fine? Well, I'm also doing great. So boys and girls, there is something that I need to discuss with you all. And what's that? Well, the thing is simple, right? We have lost a lot of time because of the floods, right? And then there were some other reasons as well, some other disturbances and all, right? So for all that, we need to make up for those losses. And that's why we need to study really hard these days. All right, it's already half the year is gone, and probably in another 9 months, you all will be writing the most important exam of your life. So for that, what you need to do? Well, you will have to prepare very hard. Are you getting my point? You do? Very good. So boys and girls, without wasting any more time, let's begin our today's session. So this is going to be a session on functional English. So in functional English, which skill are we focusing on? Let's find out. Look at that. What do you see in your screen? Pleased with Eurystheus' prayers, Lord Surya gave him the Akshay Patra. It would give unlimited food till Draupadi finished her meal. So it's a story. Story about whom? The Pandavas. Pandavas mean what? Mahabharata, right? So it's a story about the Mahabharata. So the story begins with what? Yudhishthira's prayer. He prayed to Lord Surya and Lord Surya gave him the Akshay Patra. What's that? Well, it's a magical pot that would give unlimited food till Draupadi finished her meal. Until Draupadi has eaten, it will give unlimited food. But once Draupadi has finished her meal, the magical thing will give up giving food. The Pandavas used this in their exile. As we all know the story of the Mahabharata, the Pandavas were sent in exile right? So when they were in exile by exile I mean the Vanvas, right? অসমীয়াত যদি কোৱা নিৰ্বাসন দিয়া বুলিও কয়, okay? বাহিৰৰ জেগাত পঠাই দিলা, that is exile. So Pandavas used this in their exile. তেওঁলোকৰ যিটো বনবাস আছিল সেইখিনি টাইমত they used this Akshay Patra. One day, Durvasa and his disciples arrived at Yudhishthira's dwelling. Now, what happened? There is a great sage called Durvasa. All right, but then with Durvasa, the funny thing was the man, that great man used to get angry very easily. So what happened? One day Durvasa and his disciple arrived at Yudhishthira's dwelling. Durvasa asked Yudhishthira to arrange food for him and his disciples. So Durvasa came and he told Yudhishthira, you arrange food for myself and for my disciples. Disciples মানে কি? আমাৰ অসমীয়াত যে শিষ্য বুলি কয় না, শিষ্যগণ, ছাত্ৰগণ, it's all them. Okay, his students. So Durvasa asked Yudhishthira to arrange food for him and his disciples. There was no food left to serve them since Draupadi had already finished hers. Well, the problem was that there was no food left to serve them. তেওঁলোকক খুৱাবৰ কাৰণে কোনো আহাৰ বাকী নাছিল, কিয়নো Draupadi had already finished hers. Draupadiয়ে she finished her meal. She has already eaten her meal. The Pandavas became anxious. পাণ্ডৱসকল উদ্বিগ্ন হৈ গ'ল. They became anxious. Why? Because, well, this great sage Durvasa was infamous for his ill temper. তেখেতৰ খঙৰ ক্ৰোধৰ কাৰণে, he was infamous. Infamous would be what? Something like কুখ্যাত. All right? So they became very anxious. What will happen now? If the sage gets angry, what will happen? কি হ'ব তেতিয়া? The sage and his disciple were bathing in the river would return for food soon. Well, the sage and his disciples, who were bathing in the river would return for food soon. A Rishi with his disciples who were bathing in the river would return for food soon. What will happen now? Cubodia. Draupadi prayed to Lord Krishna for help. Krishna appeared and asked Draupadi to bring the Akshay Patra. Look at that. She prayed and here appeared Lord Krishna. So Lord Krishna, what he did? He asked Draupadi to bring the Akshay Patra. As we can see praying, Lord Krishna appeared, right? And then what? Ah, Draupadi, Lord Krishna appeared and Draupadi asked to bring the Akshay Patra. So Lord Krishna looked at the Akshay Patra. What he found? On looking closely on the bowl, Krishna found a single grain of rice and he ate it. He was satisfied by the meal. He could see only a single grain of rice. এটা ভাতেই বাকি আছিল. You know. So what happened? He was satisfied by the meal. Look at that. He ate it and now look at the satisfaction. Lord Krishna was satisfied by the meal. He was satisfied by the meal. His satisfaction in turn made Durvasa and all his disciples feel so fully fed that never came to Yudhishthira's dwelling. Lord Krishna's satisfaction, তেখেতৰ সন্তুষ্টিয়ে what happened in turn made Durvasa and all his disciples so fully fed that they never came to Yudhishthira's dwelling. Durvasaৰ শিষ্যবোৰক ইমানেই তৃপ্ত কৰাই দিলে যে they never came back to Yudhishthira's dwelling. Yudhishthiraৰ বাসস্থানলৈকে তেওঁলোকে উভতি নাহিলেই. So, what are we learning here? What is the learning outcome of all this? Are we here only to learn about the story? Well, definitely no. There is something more to it. It's not just a story. What's that then? Well, this is about summary writing. Now, what is summary writing? You have a portion in your syllabus which says, substance writing. All right. So, there are a few marks for that. So the summary writing and the substance writing are one and all. It's the same thing. Summary writing or substance writing এটাই বস্তু হয়. So let's try and learn how to write a summary or a substance. Right. So steps to write a summary. What are the steps? Pick out the main idea of the paragraph. Whenever you are writing a summary or a substance, first thing you need to do is you need to pick out the main idea of the paragraph. Every paragraph will have a main idea. Your first job is you read the paragraph first and pick out what the paragraph is talking about. What is the main idea? Pick out the main idea of the paragraph. Try to shorten the sentences as much as possible. যিমানেই সম্ভৱ হয়, we should try to shorten the sentences as much as possible. Wherever possible, please try and shorten the sentences. Okay, how to do that? Well, we'll show you. But first up, let's remember the rules. Remove repetitive words and ideas. So what happens whenever you read a paragraph, you must have noticed that there are certain words or ideas which have been repeated frequently. So what you need to do, you need to remove these repetitive words and ideas. Anything that is repetitive, যিটো বারবার repeat হৈ আছে, বারবার আহি আছে, remove all those repetitive words and ideas. Remove them all. And then in the end, you must give it a proper conclusion, right? No story is complete without a conclusion. So what you need to do, you need to give it a proper conclusion. Storyটোক আমি এটা উচিত ধৰণে পৰিসমাপ্তি ঘটাব লাগিব. Whatever we are writing, we need to complete it properly. So how to do that? We'll learn that as well. So these are what? Steps for summary writing. All right. So now here is a question for you all. And what I want you to do is I want you to try and answer this question in 40 seconds. Let's try and answer this question in 40 seconds. And your time starts now. All right, my dear friends, it's time up. Probably you have got the right answer. Which of the following is not part of the summary? So summary part ki hoy, using your own words. Well, you have to use your own words, including main ideas only. You need to include main ideas, summary being shorter than the text. Yes, exact words from the text. Well, it's better you avoid the exact words from the text. So I would suggest that the right answer should be option D, exact words from the text, right? Moving on. So now, here we go. Look at the paragraph now, whatever we read. Pleased with Yudhishthira's prayers, Lord Surya gave him the Akshay Patra. It would give unlimited food till Draupadi finished her meal. The Pandavas used this in their exile. One day, Durvasa and his disciples arrived at Yudhishthira's dwelling. So how can we write the summary of this one? Let's have a closer look at it. How to write the summary for this one. So look at this. Lord Surya gave Yudhishthira the Akshay Patra, which would give unlimited food till Draupadi finished her meal. Once Durvasa and his disciples arrived at Yudhishthira's dwelling. So now for this one, what can we learn? Pleased with Yudhishthira's prayer, Lord Surya gave him the Akshay Patra, okay, and it would give unlimited food till Draupadi finished her meal. This was more than 2 lines. So what you did, if somebody has given someone something, it's obvious that he must have been pleased with that person. So Lord Surya gave Yudhishthira the Akshay Patra, which should give unlimited food till Draupadi finished her meal. You know, Pandavas used this in their exile, where they used it, that's none of our concern, right? One day Durvasa and his disciples arrived to Yudhishthira's dwelling. Instead of one day, 2 words, we used only one word, which means the same thing. Once Durvasa and his disciples arrived at Yudhishthira's dwelling. Fine. The next paragraph says, Durvasa asked Yudhishthira to arrange food for him and his disciples. There was no food left to serve them since Draupadi had already finished hers. The Pandavas became anxious. The sage and his disciples were bathing in the river would return for food soon. Draupadi prayed to Lord Krishna for help. You know, Lord Krishna was Pandava's what? SOS, like save our soul. যেতিয়াই বিপদত পৰে, they used to call Lord Krishna. And like Lord Krishna always does, he comes to their rescue. So now, এইটোক আমি summarize কেনেকে কৰিব পাৰো? How can we summarize? He asked Yudhishthira for food for him and his disciples, but there was no food left. Draupadi prayed to Lord Krishna for help. Can you see the difference? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 lines, and here only 1 and 2. Only 2 lines. So, how the magic happened? A magic to keneke hulbaru. Durvasa asked Yudhishthira to arrange food for him and his disciples. There was no food left to serve them since Draupadi had already finished hers. This part was irrelevant. Pandavas became anxious again. Irrelevant. The sage and his Bhatingin will return for food soon. This again is irrelevant. This is just repetitive ideas. Okay, they have gone for bathing, so they will return soon. What to do now? This is just a a repetition of the ideas. So Draupadi prayed to Lord Krishna. This is the important part. Then Durvasa, the name we have already mentioned. So instead of Durvasa, we use this word he. He asked Yudhishthira for food for him and his disciples, but there was no food left, right? So Draupadi prayed to Lord Krishna for help, and as always, Bhakvatsal, Lord Krishna came to the rescue of his disciples, his bhaks, right? Krishna appeared and asked Draupadi to bring the Akshay Patra. On looking closely at the bowl, Krishna found a single grain of rice and he ate it. He was satisfied by the meal. This satisfied Durvasa and his disciples also. They never came back to Yudhishthira's dwelling. So, this is the story. Now, how can we summarize it? The summary would be like this. Krishna appeared and asked Draupadi to bring the Akshay Patra. He found a single grain of rice and ate it. Okay, this made Durvasa and his disciples satisfied that they never came back to Yudhishthira's dwelling. Now, here again, this line is important, right? So we have kept these lines. Then on looking closely on the bowl, Krishna found a single grain of rice and he ate it. He found a single grain of rice and ate it. This much is the main idea of this line, right? So what we got did we took the gist of that part, and in fact this includes this part also. Okay, so what we did, we finished it in only this part, and this part was important, so we kept it like this only. Understood? You have to get the main idea. All right. ইয়াত যেতিয়া summary লিখিবা, whenever you are writing a summary or a substance, your prime focus should be on what? On getting the main idea. All right. You have to get the main idea of the thing. Okay. Now moving on. One more. Let's try and answer it before we move on to the main, other portion. This time around, I'm going to give you 50 seconds. Try and answer this question in 50 seconds, and your time starts now. It's time up, my dear friends. So, what could be the right answer? Well, the right answer is a summary includes one of the following: opinions and background, exact words from the text, repetitive words, no. The central idea and the supporting details are the main point, right? So, answer is option A. Fine then. Let's now find out the entire summary. So, this is the entire summary of that paragraph. It says Lord Surya gave Yudhishthira the Akshay Patra, which would give unlimited food till Draupadi finished her meal, right? Then rest of the things we have gone through only. You also have read it, right? So this is the exact summary of that paragraph, right? So let's have a quick glance. He asked Yudhishthira for food. There was no left. Draupadi prayed to Lord Krishna for help, and then the rest of the story we just saw it, right? So let's move on to the next part. Ah, another story now. So let's try and find out a summary for this one. এইটো story summary to উলিয়াব চেষ্টা কৰো হা. We'll extract the summary from this story as well. So the story goes like this, that old couple Philman and bosses lived in a hut on a mound. They worked hard in their firm and were only able to get as much food as they needed. Yet they were so kind that they would never let any stranger who came to their doors go without food. They welcomed the guest with joy and shared their own meal with him. So this is a story about an old couple called Philman and Bosses who lived on a hut on a mound. They were not well off. They were hardworking. They worked on their field and could get only that much which is needed for their survival. Yet they were very generous and kind-hearted, and whenever there is a guest at the door, they would never let him go without having something, right? They will feed him, and if there is no extra food, they will offer their own food to him or her. So how can we summarize this one? Let's see. The old couple, Philemon and Bosses, lived in a hut. They were hard workers. They led a simple life. They were kind-hearted. They always fed strangers and guests. So now look at this. In this one, what we have, 5 lines reduced to 2.5 lines. How? Old couple, Philemon and Bosses lived in a house on the mount. Okay. Where is that hut? That just doesn't matter. So lived in a hut. Then they worked hard in their farm and were only able to get as much as they need. Okay. They were hard workers, that is enough. Yet they were so kind that they would never let any stranger who came to their doors go without food. They led a simple life and were kind-hearted. They always fed strangers and guests. This is the main point, right? You know what we have done here? We didn't use the repetitive words. I think in this portion, a lot of things have been repeated. As you can see here, what we did in the summary, we avoided that repetition part. All right, the repetition part was avoided. All right, now moving on to the next part of the story. Are you excited? Here we go. One evening, they finished their supper and sat at the door. Suddenly, they heard the barking of dogs and shouting of boys in the village. Soon the noise grew louder. Philemon saw two strangers at whom the village boys hooted and the dogs barked. Philemon said to his wife, "Look at these boys. They ill-treat the poor strangers. I shall go and bring them. You go and see if there is any food to give them." So what would be the summary? See the magic. This part was what? It was so big. One, two, three, four, five, 6 lines reduced to just half. Excuse me, just 3 lines. So one evening after their supper, they were sitting at the door. They saw two strangers whom the village boys hooted and the dogs barked. That the couple decided to bring them in and feed them. As simple as that. That is the gist. How the village boys hooted, what Philemon said to his wife, and all those things doesn't matter. What is the main point? That the strangers were troubled by the village boys. So this old couple, stepped in to help them. So see, this is the summary of the entire story. Old couple Philemon and bosses lived in a hut. They were hard workers, they led a simple life, they were kind-hearted, they always fed strangers and guests. One evening after their supper, they were sitting at the door. They saw two strangers at whom the village boys hooted and the dogs barked. The couple decided to bring them in and feed them. So that's the story, isn't it? Now, let's move on to the next part. Before that, one more question coming your way. Again, this time around, I'm going to give you 50 seconds to answer this. Let's try and do it. And your time starts now. All right, it's time up. And the right answer for this one is a summary is shorter way to explain the text with important information or key points. That is option very good. Most of you have got it right, I suppose. That is option B. Fine. So now the third story of the day. So what is it about? Who is it about? Let's find out. There are so many lessons one can learn about life from a dog. Imagine this scenario. It's raining heavily outside and you need to leave for someone's house. You tell it to stay home. As you leave, you see it squeezing out through the gap in the doorway. You scold it and order it back home. Then at every turn you make, you suddenly see it following you sheepishly at a distance. It follows at the risk of being reprimanded for the sole reason of being somewhere nearby. How else can we experience so selfless an instance of love and faithfulness? We can learn a lifelong lesson from this sincere, warm display of perpetual companionship. So the dogs have certain qualities. The paragraph is talking about that, but how to summarize it? Let's find out. So what would be the summary like? Can you see the magic? For such a big paragraph, we wrapped it up in just 2 lines. Okay, so let's see. There is so many life lessons one can learn about life from dog. Even imagine this scenario: it is raining heavily outside, and you need to leave for someone's house. You tell it to stay home. The entire portion we can say what dog can teach us many lessons of life. It can teach us lessons on companionship through its acts of love and faithfulness, endangering itself just to accompany you. This whole portion na, from here till here is what? Companionship. This is the key word, companionship. So what we have done, we just elaborated that word companionship in it with these many words, and that's it. That's how we got the summary. So you need to understand the main idea. In this whole story, the main idea was what? Companionship. That it will always accompany you no matter what. Whatever the situation is, whatever the risk involved, it will always accompany you. So that companionship is the key word, and that's what is the summary of the story. Understood? Very good. Observe the eating habits of your dog. It does not eat except when hungry. It does not drink unless it's thirsty. It does not gorge itself. It stops eating when it has had enough. A dog also sets perfect example of adaptability. If I move to a strange place, it's able to adapt itself to that place and to its thousands peculiarities without a murmur or complaint. It is also able to learn and adapt to new families' ways and customs. It's quick and ready to please. Man, being accustomed to comfort and wealth, will be lost if suddenly stripped of all he's accustomed to. So, what is the summary like? We can learn from dog's eating habit. It will never indulge in and knows which food to avoid. Dogs are also able to adapt to its surroundings quickly without complaining as compared to man who complains at the slightest change. So the point is what? Adaptability, right? So dogs can adapt to new places without any trouble, without any difficulty. That is the gist of the story. So that's what is been focused in the summary. A dog also teaches us a thing or two about unselfish love. When dog knows that is approaching, it tries with its last vestige of strength to crawl away elsewhere to die in order to burden its owners no more. Dog does things with all vigor. However, when there is nothing to do, it lies down and rests. It does not waste its strength and energy needlessly. Many working people are burning the candles at both ends. Many suffer nervous breakdowns due to stress. Perhaps they should learn to rest like a dog. A dog, above all, is a truly man's best friend. So, what can you say? So, dogs are unselfish, choosing not to burden loved ones but to go away and die. Dogs also knows when to work, when to play, right? They do not waste their effort unnecessarily like manners do at work. Thus, we can learn a deal from dog by observing their day-to-day life. So, this is what with unselfish love and maybe what balancing. So that's what is the summary, right? So based on that, we can see this is the summary of the story as it is in your screen. So dogs can teach us many lessons. We have already seen that, and we have gone through the summary also. It's a compilation of what are the summaries we have noted, right? So moving on, there is a quick question for you all. Let's try and answer it in 30 seconds. And your time starts now. All right, it's time up. And the right answer is what? Well, it's all of the above. Write about what I read, include the key points of the text, understand what I'm reading, right? So that is what, summaries help me do all of the above. Answer is option D. Fine then. So let's try some quick other exercises. So, arrange the jumbled segments to form meaningful sentences. Three daughters, merchant with his once lived. So what can we say? We can say, you know, once a merchant lived with his three daughters, kind-hearted the third, and one was very beautiful. So we can say what? That the third one was very beautiful and kind-hearted. The merchant once heard his trade ship that had drowned. So once the merchant heard that his trade ship had drowned, this city, he asked whether his daughters to bring gifts for them before leaving. What would be this? It would be like this. Before leaving the city, he asked his daughters whether to bring gifts for them, clothing and jewels. The oldest two asked for. So we can say the oldest two asked for clothing and jewels. The third one was satisfied with the promise of a rose. So there is one last question before we wind up for the day. You have only 20 seconds for this as it's a very simple one. Your time starts now. All right. So the right answer for this one would be what? Many youngsters adore cricketer like Dhoni and Virat. That is option C. Fine then. So if we have to summarize, we learned about what? Steps to write a summary, which is to pick out the main idea of the paragraph, try to shorten the sentences as much as possible, remove repetitive words and ideas, and give a proper conclusion, right? So with that, we'll wind up for today. We'll see you next time with a different topic. Till then, stay safe and keep working hard. Thank you.